Hello everyone, welcome back to the Java tutorial series. In this video, we will learn about custom exceptions in Java. So by the end of this video, you will understand what custom exceptions are, why we create custom exceptions, and how to create a custom exception class, how to throw and handle a custom exception class, and we will see some best practices for custom exceptions. Okay. So what is custom exception? So custom exception is a class. We will create our own exception class. So as we know, we have a built-in classes. That means exception class, those are provided by the Java, that is built-in. So we already have some exception class that is built-in classes provided by Java. But in some scenarios, let's say we have some business logic, and for that particular business logic, we want a specific exception that needs to be thrown. So we will create our own exception class instead of using built-in exception class. And that particular exception class, which we will be creating by our own, we call it as custom exception class. Okay, a user-defined exception. That's why we say it user-defined exception. We are defining what is the exception class, what it will do, and how it will do. Okay. It is created by extending an existing exception class. So we have a list of built-in exception class, right? It can be exception. Okay. So let's say we have this parent class as an exception class in a exception class hierarchy we have seen, right? So we can create a custom exception using this exception as a parent class. So I can create one, what we can say, custom exception, let's say class, and I will say any custom exception, let's say class custom exception I'm giving for now. Custom exception extends exception. Exception is what? Parent class. Okay. Exception is parent class and this is child class, custom exception. So I am creating child class. Okay, and parent is exception, and child class name is custom exception. We can provide any custom exception based on our business logic. Okay, it can be like valid input exception. Okay, like that. And inside this class, we will be calling parent class constructor. So inside child class constructor, we will be calling parent class constructor, and this constructor we will be passing what error message, what exception message we want to throw if this particular exception occurs. Okay, so like that we will implementation part we will see, but for now you can see the third point, created by extending an existing exception class. Just now I showed extends exception class, which is parent class. Okay, and it is used to represent application specific error condition. That's what I told, like any specific business logic failure or something related to application specific error. So for that particular failure conditions, we will create our own exception class. So Java provides many built-in exceptions such as arithmetic exception and IO exception. And sometimes these exceptions are not enough to describe errors, okay, specific to our application. So in such cases, we can create our own exception classes, which we call it as custom exception. Okay. Now, why do we need custom exceptions? What is the requirement of this custom exception? So suppose you are developing a banking application, let's say banking application, okay, and a withdrawal amount exceeds the account balance. So let's say you have a bank account and you have some amount in that bank account, okay, and your withdrawing amount exceeding the bank account value. Let's say you have 1,000 rupees in the bank account and you're withdrawing 2,000 rupees. So in this particular scenario, so it will throw some, we should throw some business logic exception saying that it is exceeding bank account current balance, like that. Some meaningful name we need to give. Okay, so instead of throwing a generic exception which we have built-in exception, you can create own exception. It might be like insufficient balance exception, like that. Okay, and making the error more meaningful and easier to understand. So those kind of use case we need custom exception. Okay, so here they have mentioned some point. Represent business specific errors. Okay, make error messages more meaningful, like insufficient balance exception. So we should be giving the name of the exception class as meaningful, and also message, whatever message we will provide on throwing that particular exception. So what it will do, it will improve the readability, maintainability, and separate application specific errors from built-in exception. Okay, we should keep separate whatever exception which we are creating and the built-in exceptions. Okay, let's see how to create a custom exception. So to create a custom exception, simply create a class. Okay, and you can provide any meaningful name of that custom exception class, like in this case invalid age exception. Okay, and then it is extends from exception. This is what parent class. Okay, this is what parent class. In the exception hierarchy we have seen, right, there will be throwable, then error, then here exception. So exception and error are the child class of the throwable parent class. Then again exception is the parent class of runtime exception, that is unchecked. And we have seen the classes exception which are not inherited by runtime, those are checked exception. So this is exception hierarchy, right? So exception is what? Parent of all exception, whether it is unchecked or checked. So we are using this exception class parent to create a custom exception. This is what? Custom exception. Okay, custom exception class. So custom exception class is the child class which is inheriting from parent class, that is exception. And this is the class, and we will provide the constructor. Okay, this is like the same name as the class name. I hope you remember the rules of constructor. Okay, so constructor name will be same as the class name, and this is parameterized constructor since we are passing parameter string message, and we are using here keyword super. Super is used for what? Super keyword is used to call parent class constructor, parent class constructor. Okay, constructor. So exception class constructor will get called and this message will be passed. So whenever we create an object of this class, let's say we will throw and new invalid age exception. Okay, so whenever this exception, we will throw this exception, we are creating this object, right? New invalid means we are creating an object of this class, what we have defined. We are creating an object of this class. Okay, and we are providing some message here. Okay, this message. So when we create an object using new keyword, while object creation in the heap memory, the constructor is called for initializing. So constructor is called and we are passing some message. Let's say age is invalid. So this message, error message, will be going to this constructor, and this message will be calling parent class constructor. Okay, like that the flow is, and parent class constructor will hold in the message get message. So in the catch block, when we write like here we'll be writing invalid age exception e, and when we write print e dot get message, then this method age is invalid will get printed. So that is the whole flow. for now you focus on the how we are creating the custom exception class. So we are creating custom exception class using extend keyword, that is inheritance, parent and child relationship. So invalidate exception is the child class and parent is the exception class. So in the exception hierarchy, we have seen exception is the parent class of all checked and unchecked exceptions. So, and in the constructor, we are calling parent class constructor using super keyword, and we are passing the message, custom message. So while creating an object, we will pass the message. How we will create an object? New keyword and the class name. So this is, so after in the try block, if any exception error occur, then it creates a matching exception class and it throws. Okay, and the matching catch block will handle the exception and it will print the message. Okay, so to create a custom exception, simply create a class that extends the exception class, then define a constructor that accepts an error message and passes it to the parent class constructor using super keyword. Okay, super method. So that is how we create a custom exception class. Okay, let's go to IntelliJ and see some examples for better clarity. So what we are reading here, custom exception. Okay, so let me create one method. Okay, so here I will create one method, static void check age. Okay, check age, and I will pass here int age. Now in this method, let's say if age is greater than, less than 18, then I will throw okay, I will throw, but before throwing we should have the what? We should have the custom class. So let me create one class here, new Java class, and I will put the name invalid age exception class. Okay, so this is the class, and this will be inherited by the parent class, that is exception, and I will write here the constructor. Okay, what is the name of the constructor? Same as the class name, and this will be parameterized constructor. I will be passing, okay, S will be capital. Okay, I will parameterized constructor with parameter, let's say message, and in this I will be calling parent class constructor using super keyword and will be passing message. So this is our custom exception. Okay, we created just now. Now I will create an object. So in the main method, I am writing some business logic on the failure or on some condition. On the basis of some condition, we will be throwing that. Exception, throw new invalid age. See, now IntelliJ is also giving suggestions. Okay, use this exception, invalid age exception, and we will be passing some parameter. Let's say age must be, let's say 18 or above, like that. Okay, see, it is throwing compilation error since we are throwing an error, but who is handling this exception? That is the question. Who is handling? Compiler is asking who is handling this exception. So there are two ways to handle the exception. How? First way, provide try catch block in the same method itself. This is one way. Another way is use throws keyword here in the method declaration, method signature, and tell the compiler that check age, this method is not handling the invalid age exception. Instead, the caller of this method check age will be handling this exception. So see, compilation error is gone. And after this, I will print, let's say, I will print eligible to vote. Okay, eligible to vote. Why? Because if it is less than 18, it will throw exception. If it is more than 18, it will directly come to this line. Okay, Now I will call the method here. Okay, so I will use here try block. Inside try I will call the method check age, and I will provide here, let's say 12, and I will provide catch block. See, it is giving compilation error. Why? It is saying this method check age is asking you to handle invalid age exception. So we need to provide catch block invalid age exception e, and we will simply print e dot get message. Okay, that's it. So what is the whole flow? Whole flow is like we are calling this method. Execution will go to this line. Age it will calculate the age 12. So this condition will be true, and line number 9 will get executed. That means it will throw some exception. Since we are using throws keyword, it will ask the Java that the caller of this method will handle this exception. We are not handling it. So the caller of this method check age is main method. So main method is handling how? Using try catch block. And in the catch block, it is printing. So the flow we know. Only thing we are using here, instead of throw new built-in exception, we have created our own custom exception like this, and we are utilizing that custom exception while throwing based on our business logic what we have written. So based on our business logic, business requirement, we are providing our own custom exception and the message based on some business failure. So, and we are handling the exception using catch block. So the outputs would be age must be 18 or above. Let's verify. See, the output age must be 18 or above. Okay. Flow of execution we already know. Only thing we are doing in this program is we are creating a custom exception using the parent and class inheritance concept, using parent class exception, and we are using constructor to pass the message to the parent class constructor, so that if we call the get message, this message will be printed. Okay. So here, if the age is less than 18, we explicitly throwing an invalid age exception. Otherwise, program will act normally, will continues normally. So if we provide, let's say, I will show you, let's say 19. So no exception, nothing. It will print eligible to vote. See, okay. So the check age method throws a custom exception, which is then called in the main method. Main method is the caller of check age method. How main method is handling? Using try catch block. As a result, the program continues executing after the exception is handled. So even if we have different lines of code after this one, let's say program ends, so remaining line of code will execute as it is. So the flow will be continue. Okay, program ends. Okay, let me give some, let's say 10. Then the exception will occur and program will flow continue. See, program ends. Okay. So we have the concept of checked and unchecked exception. So likewise, in custom exception also we have the checked custom exception. And how do we call which one is the checked exception and unchecked exception? So if we are using exception class as a parent while creating our custom exception, then it is checked exception. And instead of exception, we are using runtime exception, then this custom exception will become as a unchecked exception. I hope you remember the definition of unchecked exception. Unchecked exception means The exception class which are inherited from runtime exception, those are unchecked exceptions. So this class is inherited from runtime exception, so we will call it as unchecked exception. And if we want to make it checked, then instead of runtime we will be using exception class, then it will be checked exception. That means the classes which are not inherited by runtime exception are called checked exception. Okay, so this is the basic difference between the checked custom exception and the unchecked custom exception. The rules are same, only I am using custom here, that's it. So a custom exception can be either checked or unchecked. If your class extends exception, it becomes a checked exception and must be handled or declared using throws class, because in checked exception, compiler forces to handle the exception using throws clause. And if it is extending using runtime, then it becomes an unchecked exception. And handling of the unchecked exception is optional, as we know. Okay, I hope it is clear. Let's see some real world examples. So custom exceptions are commonly used to represent business specific rules. Okay, on any business specific failures or business logic failures, we'll be using custom exceptions. For example, in banking, e-commerce, HR, and authentication system, so custom exceptions makes the code more expressive and easier to maintain. So these are some real world, like insufficient balance exception in the banking, invalid age exception, invalid password exception. For authentication, we are using, for e-commerce, product out of stock exception, and for HR and all, invalid employee ID exception. So these are like real world, real use case of the custom exception. Okay. So there are some best practices we should follow. So we should always use meaningful exception names, so that if we are writing the code and if someone else is looking at the code, looking at the exception, then he or she should able to understand what is this exception and why it is coming. So we should always provide meaningful names. Okay. And the class name with exception. Always the whatever we are creating custom exception, so the class name of this custom exception should be always ending with the exception keyword, so that we will know, okay, this is the exception class name. And provide clear and meaningful error message, so that developer or the debugger can understand that, okay, this is the error message and we need to rectify this way. Create custom exceptions only when built-in exceptions are not sufficient. Okay, so sometimes it happens like we cannot use built-in exceptions. We need to create a custom exception based on our business requirement. So in that case, built-in exceptions will be insufficient. So those particular case we will use custom exception. Okay. Keep exception classes very simple. Okay, based on our need. So let's quickly summarize what we have learned so far. So custom exceptions are user-defined exceptions. We are defining. That's why the name is called custom exception. Second point, created by extending exception class or runtime. So if we are creating a custom exception class extending runtime exception, we call it as unchecked exception. And if we are creating a custom exception class using by extending exception class, it is called checked exception. Okay, rule is same for built-in also, but I specified explicitly here so that we can understand. Represent application specific errors, business logic failures. Okay, these are the use cases. Can be thrown using throw keyword. So whatever custom exception we have created, we can throw using throw keyword, throw new and the custom exception class name. Okay, and in the parameter we will provide the meaningful message. Like that we can throw the custom exception. Can be handled using try catch. So whenever we are throwing, the caller of the method will handle using try catch block. Okay, so that's all for this video. I hope this tutorial helped you understand custom exception classes in Java. Okay, thanks for watching, and I will see you in the next video.